Welcome to Inner Light. My name is Angela, and in this video, I was invited by the Senior Minister of Unity on the Bay to share my thoughts on what do you do when you don't know what to do. Stay tuned for the answer.
And our last treat for the morning. Isn't this wonderful to hear from these friends? Remember, you're in a room filled with individuals that have these kinds of stories and that have this kind of wisdom innate within them just as you do. So coming together like this, every week you have access to this. You don't know what to do? You've got a room full of resources to inquire of. Last but certainly not least, and talk about being one another's teachers and students, I've been your student for many, many years, and always will appreciate the direction and guidance you've given me in my own spiritual path. I'm speaking of our next guest, and someone who has given themselves lock, stock, and barrel to Unity on the Bay and everything from sacred, silent, solemn moments at the Om Hour to actually putting muscle to the grindstone and getting the work done on our old campus. So much transformation that was provided by this wonderful lady. Please join me in welcoming Angela Ribeiro. Good morning.
Good morning, Chris. Good morning, Unity.
Love you and so grateful. So now you are here to enlighten us in this sacred, solemn moment before everyone here. What do you do when you don't know what to do, Angela?
Okay, so as I have matured spiritually, I realize that of myself, I really don't know what to do, especially when I'm faced with the challenging situations. However, I realize that each one of us have access to divine wisdom and divine guidance within ourselves. And the best way to access that is when we are present and at peace. And so I learned from my Course in Miracles teacher something that it really touched my heart, and I try to apply in my life. And he said that A Course in Miracles points us into one direction, and it can be answered in a question. And so the question is this: how much time throughout the day are you willing to practice being a master of peace? Meaning that how much time during the day, 5 minutes, 10 minutes, 1 hour, 3 hours, are you willing to train yourself to bring yourself into a state of peace and serenity? And according to your answer, so will your life unfold. And so I decided to put it into practice, because when you hear things, you need to begin to put them into practice so you can live it. And so in the morning, I do about 40 minutes of mindfulness walk when the sun is rising, just to be in touch with nature, with the feeling of my body walking, with the listening to the birds. I notice that brings me a sense of peace. When I come home, I do like a 10-minute meditation. And then in the afternoon, I'm adding an additional practice where I find it to be very soothing. I lay down on a recliner chair that was donated to me, and I put New Age music, and I get my body really relaxed, and I get in touch with the aspect of myself that is eternal, that when this physical body ceases to be, there's always going to be the awareness that I exist, whether I have a body or not. And when we begin to bring our attention to that aspect of ourselves, and I combine that with listening to inspiring videos, I go on and off, quiet, listen to inspiring video. What I notice is that it begins to create a foundation within myself, which feels very much like spiritual home. Not only I experience peace, but I also feel nurtured by life itself. And what I've come to realize is that those spiritual practices, they can become very practical in a time of need. So I'm just going to give an example. Like 4 weeks ago, more or less, I was challenged with a working situation. And when I caught myself being extremely anxious, I guess because I have been diving into the book, The Way of Mastery, for a while, then the teachings begin to pop up when you most need it. So as I was looking at the ceiling, I didn't even want to look at the situation. I was looking at the ceiling thinking, oh my God, I feel awful right now. I have all this anxiety. a voice told me something that is very clear. The Son of God can always choose how he feels, no matter what. So as soon as I heard that, I realized that me being anxious at that moment was an unconscious choice, and that I have the power and capacity to choose something else. And I realized I can choose peace instead of this. I did not feel peace right away, but I realized that that's the direction I needed to go. And so I went back to my spiritual practice that I do in the afternoon that always brings me peace. And I was able, after an hour, to be in a complete state of peace in the midst of the storm. And that I kept bringing myself back to it day in and day out until the storm faded away and left me untouched and unharmed. Another thing that I practice when I'm faced with the challenge, and I practice that as well in the situation, is that I ask myself the question of what would a Christ-like being do and feel in the same situation? And when I ask that question, I pause and I go into meditation and I let the answer to come up. And usually the answer that comes up is very different than what Angela thinks and does. So for example, the answer that came up was that Christ will feel the situation as totally inconsequential. Whether it goes one way or the other, it will not affect its sense of safety, security, and well-being because it draws all those things from within itself. So when I received that message, I was like, wow, that's very much different than Angela is thinking. Angela sees everything as consequential. But I said, can I use the power of my imagination just to get in touch with what it would be like to look at this situation as inconsequential? And I was able to relax and not be so affected by it. The next day, the situation was solved and everything was okay. So those spiritual practices, they have a very practical application. And so it's all about cultivating this state which will give you like an anchor in which you can anchor yourself and you can watch the storm as if you're watching the storm from inside your home, feeling totally safe and secure as you watch the storm go by.
What I love the most about what you just said is that moment when you got the guidance that you were free to change the way you were feeling, whether the situation changed or not. Because for me, that is the key to freedom from victimization. But we forget that, don't we? Because we think that we're responding to what's going on out here, and how can we respond any other way? How can I respond from a peaceful space when all hell is breaking loose out here? But the storm ultimately changed for you.
Yeah, and I was surprised because I wasn't expecting that thing to be spoken. It actually said in my mind, and I was like, I'm so anxious. You can choose how you feel. It's like, really? It's like, oh my gosh,
yeah.
I can choose how I feel. Wow, I can choose something different. It was like really surprising. And I just like to add one more thing. It's from another Course in Miracles teacher where he says that when you begin to cultivate a specific state of mind, it can really help you on your spiritual path. And he called the state of mind the 3 C's. 3 C's. First C is careless. Not be concerned about the things of life, which means that you're going to do whatever it is required for you to do, but you're going to remove the element of concern. Careless. The second one is clueless, is to train yourself to be totally comfortable with the uncertainties and the not knowing. Because a lot of times, especially in my past, I needed to know. If I didn't know, I couldn't relax. So at one point in our spiritual path, it will be required for us to be comfortable with not knowing. And last but not least, is the letter C, is cared for, is to begin to develop the awareness that the universe is taking care of you, and it's okay to trust and to relax. So if you can cultivate being in that state for prolonged periods of time throughout the day, you're going to see the whole universe begin to change to reflect that new state of consciousness.
So does that mean I'm on the verge of enlightenment when someone asks me how I'm doing and I tell them I'm clueless?
Well, don't tell them. Just keep it to
Yeah, don't
yourself.
tell them it's true.
Yeah.
Don't tell them, just know it. But isn't that the world we're living in right now, my friends? That we don't know. And it's really uncomfortable, isn't it? Because we want to know. And what I think sometimes is we've never known. We just thought we knew, and we were acting presumptuously out of what we thought we knew. But the reality is we don't know in the next second what's going to happen. Thank you, my dear, for sharing with us this morning.